Afternoon, officer. How you doing?
Good, how are you, sir?
Thanks for being here today. How long have you been an officer?
Since 2005.
Okay. And what was your training? What did you do to become an officer?
I attended the Law Enforcement Academy.
Okay. How long a course is that?
That's just shy of 700 hours.
In addition, have you taken any other courses like in community college or anything along the way or even before?
I have attended Seminole State College, yes.
That's just down the street?
Yes, sir.
What type of courses did you take?
It's general education courses.
Okay. Any focus on criminal justice, your chosen career?
Not at Seminole State, no, sir.
Okay. How long did you want to be a cop before you became one?
Since I was little.
Okay. Sort of a life goal for you then?
Yes, sir.
Why is that?
I enjoy helping and educating.
Okay. The traditional one, I guess it's not on all police cars, but it's on a lot of them, protect and serve.
Yes, sir.
Is that sort of a goal of yours then as a police officer?
Yes, sir.
Feel that's a pretty noble goal?
Yes, sir.
Do you enjoy it?
Yes, sir.
Can't enjoy it quite as much when you get a shots fired call, though, can you? It's got to be a little concerning, right?
Yes, sir.
So you go on the radio, I think you testified about the map, and you get a call about a disturbance first, is that correct?
Suspicious person.
That's right. At some point it got upgraded, did it not?
Yes, sir, it did.
To shots fired?
Yes, sir.
What do you then do once you have a shots fired event?
You tend to wait for a little bit more additional information, but it becomes more of an officer safety issue.
At that point, you're officer safety, right?
Correct.
Okay. So you came in, did the circle, and actually, almost coincidentally, I guess, you were able to shine a light down that entire sort of alleyway towards where this event actually occurred, right?
Yes, sir.
And noticed at least one person towards the end?
Yes, sir.
Could you even tell who it was at that point?
No, sir.
So you pull up your car and then get out, and you take out, how do you equip yourself as you're going out of your car to go to that back alleyway?
Due to the lighting, I grabbed a flashlight.
Okay. I talked to another officer before you, and he said that his gun actually has a flashlight on it. Was that the way yours was set up, or?
Yes, my gun does have a flashlight on it.
Was that what you used? No.
No, sir, I used an actual standard flashlight.
So when you first came around that corner heading over towards the scene, did you know that was the scene where the shooting occurred?
No, sir, I did not.
Okay. So when you first came up on the scene, you had your flashlight out?
Yes, sir.
Had you taken out your service revolver yet?
Not at that point, no, sir.
Okay. Tell me what you first see when you come on scene.
I saw Mr. Zimmerman standing on the sidewalk. There may have been somebody out there with him, and I saw Trayvon laying in the grass.
Okay. And when you say sidewalk, there was a walkway that you sort of came down from your car, correct?
Correct. The sidewalk makes a T.
There's a T intersection.
Right.
As you came around that corner, can you sort of orient us to where near the T or how far down that T Mr. Zimmerman was?
If you came around the side of the building to the top of the T, it was approximately 30 feet.
30 feet from the T intersection?
Correct.
Okay. Very close by to where Trayvon Martin's body was, right?
Yes, sir.
Within feet?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what was he doing?
Who?
Mr. Zimmerman.
He was standing on the sidewalk.
Okay. Did he look towards you as you were coming towards him?
Yes.
Do you remember at that point whether or not there was anybody else present?
There may have been, but I'm not 100% certain.
Okay. And flashlight on Mr. Zimmerman at that point?
Yes, sir.
And could you tell that he was wearing the clothes that we've talked about, the orange or red jacket?
Yes, sir.
At that point, could you see the injuries to his nose when you first had the flashlight on him?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And were they similar as to the picture that we've seen a little while ago?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Even more, with the actual bleeding at that point, wasn't it?
That's correct.
Okay. And his eyes were watered?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Both eyes, correct?
Yes, sir.
And what did you first say to him?
I asked him if he had seen what happened.
And his response?
Yes.
Did that seem like an appropriate response? Anything wrong with the way he answered you?
No, sir.
Next, what did you ask him?
If he had seen, if the young man had been shot, and if he had seen who shot him.
And how did he respond?
That he did, and that he was still armed.
Okay. At that point, what's your response to find out that somebody involved in a shooting is right there in front of you, armed?
At that point is when I unholstered my service weapon.
And take it out?
Correct.
That's protocol, is it not?
Correct.
Again, it's officer safety is your number one
Right.
charge, because without that, you can't do anything else.
Correct.
Can't help anyone else.
Correct.
Okay. Pointed at him?
Yes, sir.
And again, that's appropriate, correct?
Yes, sir.
You did not point it at him because of any immediate threat that he posed to you, correct? He didn't challenge you in any way, did he?
No, sir.
Matter of fact, he was completely cooperative, was he not?
Yes, sir.
But protocol is you arm yourself and make sure that you have it on him to take care of the situation.
Yes, sir.
And what did you next ask him?
As he was telling me that he had shot him and he was still armed, was when he kind of leaned over to expose the firearm.
So if I were to do that then for just a moment, tell me, I could either have you do it, I'm going to try, but the gun was on his right hip, I think you testified?
Correct.
So this jacket is longer than the one he was wearing, right?
Yes, sir.
But if we flipped it up sort of a silly way, he went like this,
Yes, sir.
and just by this movement was able to do enough.
The
to
hands
expose-
going up and the leaning over.
Oh, okay, so sort of like that?
Right.
And in just doing that movement, that was enough of a movement where the gun was exposed, correct?
Correct.
The jacket didn't cover the gun by more than a few inches, right?
I don't believe so.
Okay. So any movement up of the jacket, even that small movement that he did by leaning over, exposed the gun, right?
Correct.
And had the jacket been ridden up in any form or fashion, the gun would have been exposed, right?
I would imagine so, yes.
So, do you remember if he had a cell phone in his hand or not?
I don't recall.
Okay. In any case, he showed you his gun, kept his hands in the air, didn't he?
Correct.
That's what you told him to do?
Yes.
Okay. And what do you do at that point now that you have a flashlight, a gun, and you see another gun?
I asked Mr. Zimmerman to put his hands on top of his head, interlock his fingers,
Okay.
at which point I reholstered, made contact, hands-on contact with Mr. Zimmerman and placed him in handcuffs.
Okay. You lead the gun until you get his hands secured,
Yes, sir.
and that's protocol as well?
That's choice.
Okay. He didn't resist in any way, did he?
No, sir.
And I guess that not resisting is you have him like this, interlocked, correct?
Correct.
Then you would either turn him around or go behind him?
To handcuff him?
Yeah,
I was behind him.
right. Take one arm, get it back, take
Correct.
the other arm. You've, of course, been in, I would imagine, hundreds of situations having to handcuff people, correct?
Yes, sir.
And most people, I'll let you answer it. What percentage of people at least offer some resistance to you when you're trying to get their arms behind their back?
I object to the relevance of anyone else.
Have you had other people resist getting their arms behind the back?
Same objection, Your Honor, relevance.
At this point, I don't want to speak to you.
Well, then
Response.
please approach.
I'll rephrase it.
Okay.
Let me rephrase it. Did Mr. Zimmerman offer any response whatsoever to your cuffing him behind his back?
Any response of resistance?
Yeah, did he respond? Did he resist at all? If I
No.
said response, I apologize. Did
No.
he resist at all?
No, sir.
Complied with that command of yours immediately
Yes, sir.
and completely?
Yes, sir.
Once you had him secured, then you were able to secure his firearm?
Yes, sir.
And I think a point was made that at that point, your focus, even more so than other people involved, is to secure the firearm, correct?
Correct.
And though in a perfect world you might have been able to put on gloves, you didn't have the time then, you just grabbed the gun And I think you said you put it between one of your clips and your vest?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that was necessitated by the circumstances, wasn't it?
That is correct.
That was, again, primary goal number one at that point.
Yes, sir.
Okay. At that point, as your first contact to Mr. Zimmerman, did he seem angry?
No, sir.
Did he seem frustrated?
No, sir.
Did he seem spiteful of anything that was going on?
No, sir.
Any ill will or hatred at all that you saw him exude as you first saw him literally moments after the event?
No, sir.
Any concern about him at all except for his injuries?
No, sir.
Even though he had that obvious injury to his nose, had you seen the injuries to the back of his head yet?
While I was securing him, yes, I was able to see
So
that.
as you got behind him, you could see the blood dripping down the back of his head?
Correct.
So even with those injuries, did he seem agitated?
No, sir.
There has been testimony that he was seemingly calm. Did he come across that way to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Having just gone through what he went through, and now that you know, having just shot somebody, did his behavior to you just seem strange?
No, sir.
Just usual?
I wouldn't say usual.
Okay. Not, well, was it particularly unusual,
No, sir.
even for those circumstances?
No, sir.
You didn't think that didn't come across to you as being cavalier, did he?
No, sir.
Or just uncaring?
No, sir.
Fairly appropriate for what you now know he had just gone through?
Correct.
So, you secure the gun,
Yes, sir.
and then what's the next thing that you do?
I had Mr. Zimmerman have a seat in the rear of my patrol car.
Okay. Let's talk about sort of the walk over. My understanding, again from other testimony, is that another officer came on scene fairly quickly behind you. Do you recall that?
That's correct.
Do you recall who it was?
Officer Ayala.
Ayala? And you had control of Mr. Zimmerman, and that became your now task, correct?
Correct.
And was it true that Officer Ayala took over the situation of dealing with the other person, now known as Mr. Martin?
That is correct.
Okay. And as you were going, anything else that you recall Mrs. Zimmerman saying to you at the scene before you started walking towards the car?
Not before, no, sir.
Okay. As you were walking towards the car, didn't he utter something to you, sort of voluntarily?
Yes, sir.
And what did he say?
He stated to me that he was yelling for help and that nobody would come help him.
And how long after you first saw him did that happen? Within a minute?
It was a few minutes.
Okay. As long as it took to do what we just talked about?
Correct.
And then, because as soon as you had him cuffed, you secured the gun, all right? Turned him around and walked him towards your car.
Correct.
The car was 30 yards away,
Approximately.
and it was during that walk, actually almost immediately upon walking towards the car, that he uttered that to you, right?
It wasn't very long after, no, sir.
Okay. He actually said that to you twice, didn't he?
Correct.
Second time was after you got to the car?
That's correct.
Tell me how he said that. Was it as... tell me how he said that.
It was almost confusion. Sort of.
Well, tell me.
That's basically what it was. Sort of a confused look on his face.
Like he didn't know why, after screaming for help, nobody would come help him?
Correct.
Object to that as calling for speculation.
I'll rephrase it, Your Honor.
Thank you.
It came across to you as though he was confused?
That's correct.
You had testified a little while ago about Mr. Zimmerman's condition. We've talked about his injuries, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then you also said that the back, particularly the back of his jacket, was wet.
Yes, sir.
Of course, it was raining on and off that evening, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
Was the back noticeably more wet than the rest of his body?
Yes, sir.
As though he had been laying in grass on his back?
That's correct.
And he actually also had pieces of grass on his back as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
Could you tell with blue jeans that the back of his blue jeans were wet as well, or could
It
you,
appeared to be a little bit darker.
a little bit darker than the front?
Correct.
Evidencing to you what in the darkness?
That he had been laying on his back.
And that his jeans were wet as well on the back?
Correct.
So you get him to the car, which my understanding is that you stayed with him the entire time?
I did.
Again, that's your charge at that point, correct?
Correct.
So you were there when the medical personnel came and treated him?
I was.
Did he say anything, well, did he say anything about the facts of the case to the medical personnel?
No, sir.
When you first arrested him, when you first detained him, did he ask for a lawyer?
No, sir.
As far as you know, all the time that you were with him, did he ever ask for a lawyer?
No, sir.
So you have him in the car, medical personnel sort of deal with him and finish with him, correct?
Correct.
Were you waiting for them to finish so that you could continue on with what you had to do, which at that point became transporting him?
Correct.
Okay. So that was mainly your reason for waiting around. Let them finish and then continue on?
Yeah, I have to wait if they decide if they're going to transport or not.
And how was that decision accomplished?
Through the paramedics.
And do you know, were you there? Or listening?
I could overhear bits and pieces. I was
Okay.
kind of pushed back because there was a crowd around the doorway of the car.
Including the paramedics?
It was a crowd of paramedics.
Gotcha. Mrs. Zimmerman's still in the backseat of your car
Correct.
with his legs out on the ground,
That's correct.
and then the paramedics attending to him.
Correct.
Do you know which one made the decision to transport or not?
Which paramedic? I do not.
Okay. But it seems that the decision to release him back to you was what was done.
Yes.
Correct? Did you have any impact on that? Like, I want to get him to the station. Are we done here? What's going on?
No, sir.
Okay, left that in their hands.
Yes, sir.
So he's then released to you
Correct.
and put him in the back seat of the car. At some point, did you actually have to help him get up out of the car for the rest of the examination where you sort of lifted him up? He was still, I'm sorry, let me start. He was still cuffed in the back seat of the car, correct?
Correct.
And as he was being treated by medical personnel, you still had to have him cuffed.
He was still handcuffed, yes.
At that point, all you know is that he's acknowledged having shot somebody.
Correct.
And you're not going to release somebody under those circumstances just yet.
Correct.
Okay. So when the medical personnel wanted him lifted up to check the rest of him, did you help lift him up?
No, sir.
Do you know if another officer did?
I don't recall.
Do you know how it happened with the medical personnel? If you
It
were
may have
watching?
been two of the paramedics lifted him up.
Okay. Do you remember that happening?
I remember him standing up, but I don't remember who.
Okay.
It wasn't me.
Anyway, that's finished. He's now in the backseat of the car, still cuffed,
Correct.
and you're taking him back to his Sanford Police Department.
That's correct.
And tell me again of the conversation about feeling lightheaded.
He said that he felt lightheaded, had a headache while he was in the backseat of the patrol car.
Did that seem to be consistent with his injuries to you?
Yes, sir.
And did you then call over to Sanford Police Department to figure out what to do with him now that he might have to go to the hospital?
I had called the supervisor that was on scene,
All right. Do you recall who that was?
Sergeant McCoy.
And tell me of the conversation with Sergeant McCoy.
I explained to her the comment that he had made about feeling lightheaded. She advised me if he wants to go to the hospital, we'll transport him to the hospital. If not, we'll take him to the station.
Okay. Did you have a discussion with Mr. Zimmerman that though you could transport him to the hospital, the expenses of that would be on his shoulders.
I don't recall that, no, sir.
They would, in fact, though, you would not, SPD doesn't cover expenses if he goes to the hospital, right?
I don't believe so.
Okay. And then we've learned, we've seen the pictures, I'm not going to put them back up right now, but there was one picture after Mrs. Zimmerman had been cleaned up, correct?
Correct.
Those pictures were taken after midnight that night, were they not?
I don't know what time they were taken, but it was after.
After the initial interview with Detective Singleton?
Correct.
Do you know who cleaned him up at SPD?
While at the station, he was given a bottle of water and some tissues.
Oh, to sort of clean himself off?
Correct.
Okay. And is that then how it went from the first picture we saw, the one with him with the blood all over him, to the one where the blood is gone?
He was cleaned up some by the fire department on scene, and then while he was at the station.
Okay. Was there ever a time at Sanford Police Department where there was any other videotaping of him that you know of?
Not that I'm aware of, no, sir.
Was there ever a time where he needed any physical assistance from you or whatever in helping, being against a wall or doing anything like that?
No, sir.
And you watched him for about 30, I think you said, 30 or 40 minutes before the investigator came in to talk to him, right?
Correct.
To question him about what had happened?
Yes, sir.
And did you say that you watched that interrogation or interview?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Was he cooperative?
He appeared to be so.
Okay. Did he ever ask for a lawyer during that event?
I don't know.
Had he asked for one, the interview would have stopped, correct?
Yes, sir.
I might just have a moment, Your Honor. Thanks very much for the time. No further questions.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Just briefly, thank you, Judge. Officer Smith, you were asked if when you came into contact with the defendant, he seemed to be angry or frustrated, and you said that he did not.
Correct.
Do you know what was going on in his head when he pulled the trigger for the bullet that killed Trayvon Martin?
Let me interrupt with an objection. I think that's going to be speculation, and I would object to that, Your Honor.
Okay, sustained is for speculation.
Do you know what he was thinking before you arrived?
Your Honor,
Well, that's a yes or
similarly,
no. That would, if the answer is yes, it calls for speculation.
if the answer is no, I would suggest it's not relevant.
Okay, sustained.
You were asked about whether or not his firearm was visible when he exposed it to you like this,
Yes.
and you had a flashlight on him.
Yes, sir.
Do you know if his firearm was visible when he was out at the location where Trayvon Martin's body was in that lighting?
That I don't know.
You said at the station you offered the defendant some tissues, like Kleenex,
Yes, sir.
to clean himself.
Yes, sir.
Did anybody else clean him at the station?
Not that I saw.
Could you help me with one photograph? Judge, I'd like to publish one more photograph, if I could. Officer Smith, I'm showing you states 46. Is that a fair and accurate depiction of the way the defendant appeared when he was at the police station after he had been cleaned up?
Yes, sir.
All right, and that was taken on the evening of the 26th, or perhaps just after midnight into the 27th?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. Judge, that's all I have.
A very brief follow-up. I think it was just a mistake, but I want to clear it up. Mr. Guy, when he suggested his maneuvering for the picture, actually lifted up his left arm. You had testified, however, pretty certainly that the gun was on his right side, correct?
Correct.
And that he lifted up his right arm.
Correct.
So you have no question in your mind whatsoever, do you, that the gun was located on his right hip?
No, I don't.
Okay. Mr. Guy's putting it up his left arm was just a mistake as far as you can tell?
Correct.
Thanks, nothing further.
And can you redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, may Officer Smith be excused?
He may.
Thank you very much.